Welcome everybody to the Future Proof Circular Economy Showcase. The intention of our event is to provide you the key concepts of what is the circular economy. Really showcase some of the leaders that are on the ground, really making a big difference in making this economy happen. And really to give you the biggest, broadest perspective of what is this that is transforming your economy right now and what it's going to look like in the future. And today we'll start off with Christina Seidel from the Recycling Council of Alberta, and she'll talk to us about circular cities and give us a bit of an introduction into the concept of a circular economy. Leigh Cannizzaro of the Plastic Bank will talk to us about plastic banks' work with social plastics and how we're going to resolve the crisis of plastics happening in the third world right now. And next we'll have Christopher Bush of Cadillac's Agri-Innovation Society, and really looking at the innovation happening in the agricultural industry to really turn this industry into a sustainable circular model. Next, we'll have Lindsey Boyle of the Circular Citizen, who will talk us about motivation factors for circular economy and what drives consumer habits. And lastly, and not least, we'll have Sophie of Terracycle and Loop, really looking at the work that Terracycle does in the recycling of everything and in creating this new consumer goods circular economy strategies with Loop. And Christina, you will start us off.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, Nick. I assume you can see the screen fine? Fabulous.
Yes,
okay. Okay, so I'm just going to talk quickly about circular economy in terms of what it is, and then talk about a project that the Recycling Council of Alberta undertook and is still ongoing with circular cities in Alberta, Canada. So just moving towards circular economy, then there's a lot of misunderstanding around what circular economy is. I think because of its name, a lot of people assume it's recycling. It is not recycling. It's so much more holistic than recycling. So I just wanted to reiterate that circular economy is really about three primary principles: that we are going to redesign things so that we don't have waste in the first place, and we also don't have pollution associated with that. That the materials and the products that we make, that we're going to keep them in use for a long time, but at the same time that we're actually going to have a positive net effect on the environment by regenerating natural systems. So I just wanted to show you that this is my favorite representation of, really, from our point of view, from the waste side, this is what circular economy looks like. So here's where we are today, which is a linear economy. And this is the recycling economy, which is what we're working towards now, where we can, recycle things once or maybe twice. But really, where we want to end up with is circular economy. And you'll see the difference here in this drawing. Basically, it means that we've redesigned our systems to the point that we actually don't generate waste anymore. And that's what circular economy is about. So how do we do that? How do we actually create a circular economy? Well, what we need to do is we need to reinvent how our economy works. And so that is presented in this slide through the idea of transforming how we actually do business. And these options around the outside are really how we do that we do things like circular supply chains, products as a service. And I'm just going to run through those quickly because they are pretty interesting. So the first one is circular supply, which means if we're going to make something, let's make it smarter so that we're actually not making it from virgin materials anymore. We're making it from reused, recycled materials. Then the next one is product life extension. And a lot of these things take us back to principles that we used to have that we've kind of lost over the last couple of decades. But the idea is that let's make things last a long time. So that's product life extension, so that we don't buy new things every day. Then the next one is product as a service. And this is about us being able to use services rather than things. There are so many things that we don't need. We need the service that they provide. So purchasing a service rather than a thing. That is a fundamental to circular economy. And related to that is sharing, so that we share things through options like tool libraries, where we don't all need a specific item. Instead, we can share it and borrow it as we need it. And that's going to prevent us from all having one sitting around in our basement. And of course, then at the end of the day, of course, we are going to recycle materials as well when we're done with them. So that's a really quick overview of what circular economy is. Now, how does this apply to cities? Well, if you think about cities, cities are where a lot of activity takes place. So if you look at what happens in cities, it's a lot of the activity, it's a lot of the consumption. So if we're going to have a huge impact, cities is a good place to start. Now, there's been a lot of leadership shown around the world on circular cities, and these are just a list of some of the communities. Of course, a lot of them are in Europe. Not a big surprise, because Europe really is the leader in a lot of these areas. So the communities that we had working with us, you'll see on this slide. So we had 5 communities that represented from small to big, and we brought them together into this particular project. So what we did was, we actually brought them together as a city with multiple departments to talk about what they're doing today and how they can improve the efficiency of what they're doing as related to circular economy. So this created a really important discussion that was looked at from the community's point of view on a very holistic basis. So at the same time, what we're doing as part of our phase 2 is, once we've identified some of their immediate opportunities, remember I talked about Europe, and Europe seems to be far ahead. So we are connecting our cities with some of the leaders in Europe so that they can work together on a mentoring basis and really borrow some ideas and apply them in our communities then. So what we ended up coming to at the end of this process is what's called roadmaps. So for each of these towns, and you'll see that on the right-hand side of the slide, we actually developed a roadmap for each of these communities. And that presented the options that they have, the real opportunities they have for becoming more circular. So I invite anybody to go to the Recycling Council of Alberta website and look at these roadmaps. So these were done collaboratively with the communities, and they now have created that foundation for them to move forward and actually implement the ideas that they have towards circularity. And the great news is we actually have phase 2 started on this project now, so we will be doing exactly that. We're going back to these communities to help them to actually implement these roadmaps. So that's a quick overview of what we've been doing up here in Alberta. I'd sure be happy to connect with anybody on any of the details. If you want to reach out to me, just the email here works great, and I'd love to chat with anybody about circular cities and how you can maybe bring that to your area as well. So back to you, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. All right, so Taylor, if you can share your slides, you're up next.
Like, you have to stop sharing, dear, in order for me to share. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Taylor. I'm from Plastic Bank. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and I'm sharing with you on behalf of Plastic Bank, the organization I'm part of the leadership team for. And so we're stopping ocean plastic. Oops, if I could advance my slides, that might actually be instrumental. Oh, there we go. So the problem, of course, is we're drowning in plastic. It's a dump truck every minute of every day going into the ocean. I'm going to go quickly through these slides. I only have a brief time with you, so I won't go through every single aspect of it. So please bear with me. But effectively, we're living in a world where, while we're drowning in plastic, people and consumers and companies are demanding brands with purpose. Ways in which that we can engage, a demographic to participate with us in the circular economy. We've got the Greta generation, the millennials that are saying, hey, we need to move towards the circular economy. We need to move towards products with purpose. And so how can we do that? What we recognize in Plastic Bank is that gold lies beneath our feet. And so our CEO founder, David Katz, often communicates if there are diamonds laying in the environment and there was no bank or institution to exchange them, they would remain in the world as rocks. And so the same is true of plastic and debris that we're inadvertently throwing into the environment and ending up in our oceans. So we really are out to reveal this value of the material, and in doing stopping ocean plastic. So we deliver environmental, social, and economic impact in areas of extreme poverty. So by revealing this value of the material, we translate it into the hands of the people who encounter it in areas where we operate. So we've effectively created a monetary system to collect material in these areas, to develop recycling ecosystems where we operate. And it's all supported by an Alchemy blockchain-based technology platform that facilitates the transactions. So they bring us plastic, paper, and aluminum. We then give them cash or, rewards of their need, like Wi-Fi, cell phone minutes, education for their youth, things they need and can't afford, and it can be deposited in their now bank accounts. So we're talking about a population who often has no ID or birth certificate. They're not getting a bank account. So we provide financial literacy, financial inclusion with our collection members in the areas where we operate. We take that material, we call it social plastic, and we actually sell that to big companies like what you see here, SC Johnson, in a bottle of Windex. So I invite you to go to your grocery store this evening, pick up a bottle of Windex. You'll see our material in it. It's been collected from Indonesia and the Philippines. So we really act as this brand activation, this consumer engagement strategy to say, okay, let's reveal the value of the material, put it into the hands of the people, have a brand activation and engage consumers so that everyone can participate effectively in stopping ocean plastic by empowering people. So we've become 3 times United Nations awarded as a root cause solution to ocean plastic to prevent it from getting there in the first place. So we began in Haiti. It was the best and worst place to begin a business, somewhat challenging, and yet they need it the most. We then moved over to Southeast Asia and opened the Philippines, Indonesia, Brazil, most recently Egypt, with Cameroon and Thailand opening soon. So we really reveal the value at every step. You could spend some time just even looking at this slide, but it really demonstrates the entire circle nature of what we do, where we collect the material, we exchange the value, we reward the collection members, we incentivize them, really the gamifying of recycling, the Candy Crushers, like what is that value of the material that's going to shift behavior where it's not telling someone to recycle, but hey, this material actually enables my children to go to school. It pays for my insurance in case something happens to my husband. It puts additional protein on our table. It enables me to have Wi-Fi, light, right? So rice, water, kind of you name it. We have education programs and schools where we operate, and then certainly collecting the material and turning it into all kinds of applications, from Hugo Boss made jackets, hoodies, backpacks, to food grade berry trays in Aldi grocery stores in Italy, to stuffing of pillows and blankets, kind of you name it. Our application works. And really is unleashed to engage the consumer demographic. So we have a very powerful model. We just celebrated having collected 1 billion bottles to date. So we've gone deep at developing the infrastructure where we operate. That's equivalent of 21 million kilograms. We have 20,000 collectors in our community base, and we increase their collector income by up to 40% by removing layers of middlemen and shortening the chain that exists in the countries. So another demonstration of they can exchange over cash. That's what we see initially. And as they gain confidence and experience with us, then they start to exchange it for other materials. And why in our world, we partner with all kinds of ways. Okay, Cooper Vision is a new partner. How can we help support their eye care, for example? So we continue to try to layer in additional opportunities with the partners, and how we can bring more value to people just like these, and really create impact where it matters in these people's lives, and really change generations to come. How can we end poverty?
It's 11:30.
So inside of that, and why people partner with us is because we have a blockchain verified banking application effectively. So the collectors have their own dashboards and or login. The recycler processors in country have their own login to optimize their process. Our partners have their own login to verify their impact. And our next phase of our platform is to engage consumers to connect, say, an individual in North America to a family in Haiti, and actually be able to transfer impact, so that when you take your recycling to the grocery store, you could actually choose to not get that 5-10 cent back, but actually transfer it to a family overseas and in these countries where it is important. I'm going to skip over this slide for the sake of matter of time. And just finish with some of our impact, of course, that we have media-wise. And our two primary products to date are our social plastic that we sell for integration into the packaging. But for those companies who don't want to actually use the social plastic, they can do impact or plastic neutrality with us, social impact programs like sending children to school or providing cell phones, kind of you name it, we can craft that social impact program. And in summary, we have partnerships that really scope all of the demographics and business verticals, from the social plastic usage to the impact, and then those who enable our business and really leverage their networks to create more impact together. And thanks. My email is taylor@plasticbank.com. I'm super happy to connect with all of you. There's a lot more slides in this deck and we'll go through those today, but please feel free to reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone. And of course, we're looking for partners who want to create that impact for them and with us.
Perfect. Thank you, Taylor. All right, Chris, you are up next. Please share your slides. You're on mute, Chris.
Mute. Yeah, boy, you should, I think I'd be versed at Zoom by now, right? You can see the slides okay though, yeah?
Yes, just
Yeah,
fine.
okay, yeah, good, perfect. And Nick, thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate, boy, there's a lot going on in the world today. We can all have lots of places to go. And I want to start my talk, we're going to talk about the Clean BC Symbiosis Center. We have a three-part mission in our program: power the world, feed the people, heal the planet. Simple things to say, very challenging things to do. The key to these, though, is to move up in context and address them together. And I'll start by saying I never meant to become a subject matter expert in the material that I did, but we were looking for the best bad examples in the world, and certainly this one stood out. In 2006, there was a little sidebar story in the back of Popular Science magazine. I was working in telecom, doing mobile asset management, mobile information management, helping companies get more from the resources that they had at hand. And there was a story about the Audette farm in Vermont, the cow power program. They were making energy from manure. And I recognized that agriculture has a problem. It's actually got a whole bunch of problems. But as a systems designer expert, I recognize that means agriculture has an opportunity. I mentioned there was a technology that I read about called anaerobic digestion that let them make an energy product from manure and other agriculture residuals. I knew there was technologies that would let us harvest nutrients, the rest of the story, the non-energy components that was growing, but did not have a presence in Canada. There were at the time 7,500 facilities in Germany and 12 in Canada. And what we looked at is targeted zero waste agriculture, building systems, because we need food, we need water, we need energy. We have animals that give us food. They also give us byproducts, lots and lots of byproducts. We can use those manures to make energy in a biogas plant. Also gives us an energy product. Also gives us fertilizer products that we can turn directly back into new food and feed. That gives us opportunities for more energy products, cleans water, feed for animals, food for people. Start the system over again. Now, in the world today, people are progressively aware of the environmental impacts of agriculture. There are some very good works, Hulker Valley in the Okanagan, right? There was a study from Cornell that sought to understand the externalities of our food systems, such as fertilizer production. And there's other media out there that is propaganda in a lot of ways, that it's managed data, right? You know, if you torture the data long enough, it'll confess to anything. We need to get to some facts, right? And other reports that were done. Our answer to that is really, we're going at it through the info wars, right? We've based our program, we call it the In Future Project, informatics at the nexus of food, energy, water, and health, pricing in the completeness of our system, and things like plastic we're talking about in intelligent cities. All of that can be built into these models. You know, and the world is exploding with data today. But that icon on a blank page doesn't tell you very much. You need to bring it into context to understand how you can drive meaning, how you can create actionable items. In our program, we're working with digital farms that we're taking that all into a complete picture. And we have the ability now to anonymize data so that farms that choose to be progressive can be protected. In fact, we're making it so that it's becoming so that only the farms that are participating are the ones that are really safe, that are future-proof, Nick, in your language. Right, we've got more than 40 partners now. We're working at a place called the Eco Dairy in Abbotsford. There's about $4 million in projects going forward, driven largely again by the energy play right now. Agriculture presents much more than a single circular economy. There's so many different loops that are all part of this. And what we put together, our Symbiosis Center, is to address as many of these as we can, right? We're putting 5 centers of excellence co-located that are each dealing with a different piece of that equation. Again, based on that agricultural organics, we create revenue by selling renewable natural gas, which fills the demand in the Clean BC strategy, right? Again, decarbonizing, but then bringing all of these other things, using the revenue from that gas to bring the rest of the technologies to the table. You know, and one thing we have learned definitely is that manure can make energy, again, to pay for things. We can make clean water. We can make, this is bedding agricultural fiber, which can replace sawdust in a lot of applications, and nutrient cake that can replace fertilizers made from hydrocarbons and mined around the world. Now, imagine a world, this is where we're going. Right now, we're dealing where the world is. We're dealing with the manure problem from animal agriculture. There's some saying we have to end that. Imagine a world where 3,000 acres of protein production from corn can be replaced by a 1 cubic meter reactor. There's a company called Callista that is doing that. They're fermenting methane. So the gas that heats our water and we cook on today can be used, turned directly into food, opens incredible opportunities. And the whole synthetic biology world, they love the example of mango. Fashion is another place that there's tremendous impact. Plastics, Mango Materials is making a product that they talk about. You can ferment this plastic, PHB. You can print your clothes out of it. And when you get tired of them, put them back in the reactor, take them apart into their elements and make new clothes again, right? You know, it's just another piece. So again, circular bioeconomy, the message is that agriculture definitely has an opportunity. Canada has an opportunity to lead the world in agriculture. There's an awareness of the need that has critical mass now. Energy can play a part in the development. On-farm biogas with nutrient recovery directly impacts at least 12 of the 17 SDGs. And we're here to serve. Our website, catalystpower.org. We're in Abbotsford. When we are able to travel, we welcome you to come for a visit.
Thank you, Chris. Lindsey, you are up next. Please share your slides.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Lindsey Boyle. I'm the founder of Circular Citizen. And I thank Christina for the great upfront context on the circular economy. I'm going to start my presentation by just saying that I believe that a circular economy is really the best plan that we have for the principles that Christina teed up at the beginning, but also because it is a climate solution, and it's also a solution that has benefits for both people and businesses, and it's a shared system. So as people, we can contribute to it, but we also see benefits for businesses, which are essential to shifting away from a linear economy. And so with that, that's really kind of my just my intro slide. And to introduce what Circular Citizen does and my work, I'm going to use an example to bring it to life, because I work on the demand side of the circular economy. So I'll start with a story. In April 2019, when I was about a year into learning about the circular economy, I was lucky enough to go to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation CE 100 member workshop, which is a big workshop inviting many of the big leaders in the circular economy, and they all gathered at Nike at that time. And I saw a panel of circular designers, and one of the lead designers for circular products there was named Noah Reinhardt-Murphy, and he was up talking about their approach to circular design, and he said this: And I found this fascinating. So research has shown that users are more interested in products having a second life than in getting any money back for returning them. So this really got me thinking that, Nike was really thinking about the opportunity of a reverse logistics system, how to get shoes back. And they were learning that they actually wouldn't have to pay people or give anyone a discount on their next shoe purchase. People are just wanting to do this because they don't want to see shoes go into the landfill or go to waste. So this was really fascinating to me, and it led me to the question, or maybe the kind of caveat, they're seeing this in a big enough way that they're considering the opportunity, but not everyone's motivated that way. So the question is, who is, and how many people? And that's the work that I do. So in order to really answer those questions, we need market research. And so the work that I'm going to share as an example is a project with Vancouver-based nonprofit One Earth and Citra, the Finnish Innovation Fund. So we're replicating something that was originally done in Finland. And this is not a study to ask people whether or not they are sustainable, or whether or not they would want to return shoes to Nike. This is a very kind of broad motivation-based segmentation, which is really trying to understand the dominant motivations that drive people to make any decision in their life. And it kind of complements the kind of generational opportunity that we often talk about, which is very valid. Millennials are very motivated, and Gen Z very motivated towards being sustainable, but we want to see kind of a different dimension of those motivations. So this is basically a representation of the BC population, people ages 20 to 70, and it really shows that it all adds up to 100%. And these are not groups of people; these are motivations that are dominant in people. We all have mixed motivations, but these are the ones that really are the kind of the big ones that drive decisions that people make. So we've got people, on one end of the spectrum, motivations that are very driven by the planet being top of mind, factored into people's actions. And on the other end of the vertical axis, we have people make choices based on other decisions, wanting to take care of their family or save money or honor their traditions, all kinds of other motivations. And then on the horizontal axis, we have, people that are making less sustainable actions. And then on the right, we have people that are making, many more sustainable actions in their lifestyle. So this is really kind of the names that we've given the motivations, and kind of gives you an idea of the big groups or the big motivations that exist for people in our province. So that brings us back to Nike. And last week, or 2 weeks ago now, they announced that they are launching a line called Nike Refurbished, and they are taking back lightly worn shoes or selling shoes that have factory flaws. They're selling only in stores, in select stores, 15 stores. And basically it's an opportunity for people to buy Nike at a discount and buy products that might otherwise end up in the landfill. So I don't know the answer to this. It's really my hypotheses based on my research. But the question is, which of these motivations would be motivated to buy Nike Refurbished? So my informed guess, and anyone that wants to add to the chat, please do, but my informed guess would be that Healthy Life and Planet would be very motivated to buy Nike Refurbished because of the lower carbon footprint of buying a shoe that has a second life. The eco trends would also be very motivated, maybe the most motivated, because they want to be part of a movement. And you noticed on the box, it said this is part of Nike's journey toward carbon, low carbon. They want to be this eco-trends is very motivated basically by kind of this culture of kind of moving towards eco-friendly choices, eco-friendly living. And then I would also say shop and style, they are not motivated by the planet, but they're very motivated by what's stylish. And so the fact that it's Nike would be a plus, but potentially the fact that the shoes are not sold online may be a limitation or a barrier for shop style and social, because they're very oriented to e-commerce and buying online. So that is just a little snapshot of the type of work that I do in the circular economy. These motivation profiles are going to be free and available to anyone to use them. And you can get in touch with me to learn more about how to be on the list to receive news of the launch when we make the profiles available to anyone who wants to use these to create circular economy strategies for their product or business.
Thank you, Lindsey. So our next and final presentation is Sophie. And for those of you who have questions, we'll have a question and answer period where we can take them right after that. And Sophie, please share your slides.
Can you see my slides now?
Yep, perfect.
So I am here today to introduce you, if you haven't heard of already, Loop, which is what I work for. And Loop is a global platform for reuse, where we're working with existing brands, retailers, and lots of other businesses to move into the circular economy. Before I dive into Loop, I wanted to first start with a bit of an introduction of Terracycle, which is Loop's parent company. And while Loop is quite new, and we've really started recently to bring on the circular economy into the CPG product space, Terracycle has existed for about 20 years working in this innovative recycling and waste management space. So we actually provide a variety of services. Usually you'll see us on perhaps brand packaging, providing recycling for things like chip bags, granola bar wrappers and things like that. But we also do work in, for example, ocean plastic and other recycled materials, where we will collect actual ocean beach plastic and work with brands to reincorporate that into their packaging. We also do have a foundation that does waste cleanup and all kinds of innovation around waste collection. So we're not your typical waste management company, but rather focused for the last 2 decades on moving away from the linear economy and supplementing our existing infrastructure. So for example, the recycling infrastructure. So I thought this was funny. This is very similar to the imagery that Christina was showing, but Terracycle works primarily in recycling. And what we are always trying to kind of teach brands is that recycling and whether or not an item or packaging that you have is recyclable is not based around whether or not that thing is technically recyclable, because technical research and figuring out how to recycle something is great, but even if something is technically recyclable, if it is not practically recyclable, then it's not going to be actually recycled. So that's the main kind of thing you need to think about when you are trying to purchase a product and thinking about whether or not that packaging is going to be recyclable, thinking about whether or not something is recyclable in your local infrastructure. It is all about whether or not it is profitable. If it costs more to collect and process a material than that actual material is worth, then that product's probably not going to be recycled, because your recycling companies are going to lose money doing so. And that's why Terracycle primarily operates in this hard to recycle or recycling at a deficit material. So we'll work with those brands to pay for that recycling and, essentially collect that product and be able to recycle things like toothbrushes, toothpaste, and all of that. Loop, however, is our newest endeavor where we want to take that kind of supplementing the current recycling system even a step further. So designing away from single use altogether, rather than just trying to recycle what is the result of our single use economy. So with Loop, we're creating a global platform, and different from a lot of maybe reuse systems where bulk bins and consumer bring their own cup to the store. What we are trying to create is a scalable system where we are appealing to consumers and all of Lindsey's kind of mindsets and motivations, where not only the eco consumers are going to be interested, but rather any consumer will find this very accessible and convenient. So we actually launched in our first physical locations last year, where we have been for the last 2-3 years working with brands to develop reusable versions of their packaging. And we've launched in 4 markets so far via e-commerce. We've now started to move in store, where our French retail partner Carrefour has in 10 to 20 locations and expanding every day, physical product that you're able to purchase and then return via those locations. So starting to build a physical system where consumers can find reusable options of brands that they already know, already might be interested in purchasing, and slowly kind of move their lives into a reusable ecosystem. So today we're in 4 markets. We're working with a number of large retailers to bring Loop and Loop brand products in store. So in the US, launching with Kroger and Walgreens later this year. Kroger in Portland, Oregon with Fred Meyer, and Walgreens in the New York area. And then we've recently also launched in Canada through our e-commerce platform, loopstore.ca, but we'll also be working with Loblaw to bring this in physical stores, probably starting with the Toronto, Ontario area. And so across the globe, we're looking at bringing single-use products into durable versions. Working with brands to do what they do best, which is design their product and understand their contents. But now, instead of designing for a single use brief, which is something that, packaging that they're selling to the consumer that needs to be as little material as possible and as little waste as possible, or maybe recyclable within the existing infrastructure. Instead, they're designing for this new reusable brief, which is packaging that is durable, that can be cleaned by Loop, that could be sold within perhaps some of our retail channels. And we're working on bringing new channels like brand direct channels and other systems to life every day. So these are just some of the products that we are working on. Definitely many, many more being developed, and these are global products. Overall, we're trying to create a system where reuse almost feels just as easy as disposability, instead of isolated systems where, if you go to Just Salad, you can only use that Just Salad bowl at Just Salad and nowhere else. This is a system where you can pick things up at a Loblaw, then you can bring it home, then maybe you can go to Tim Hortons and drop off your reusable containers and pick up your coffee in a reusable container. So that's really the system that we're trying to build. And recently Burger King, which is one of our partners in a number of geographies, and their parent company also owns Tim Hortons, they're working with us on designing this custom burger or sandwich container and then reusable beverage container. So that's kind of going to start to build this network and system beyond just the retail space, which again also has a huge area to grow. So I'll stop it there and happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophie, and thank you all the presenters. So now what we'll do is we'll just move to question and answer. So what I'd ask is, anybody has a question, they can just type it right into the chat. And if anybody's having a hard time with typing in the chat, you can also put your hands up and we'll call on you for some questions. So any questions right now to any of our presenters? Or even questions from one of our presenters to another. Okay, so we're just waiting for people to type, and we're waiting for that. Maybe I have a quick question for Chris just to start it off. So I know you're, tell us a bit more about the Abbotsford farm. You mentioned a whole bunch of different technologies. So tell us a little bit about how you've got the black stuff and how you're using that to drive this circular economy on the farm.
Yeah, so the Eco Dairy is the location. In 2010, our team built the very first on-farm biogas plant, also in Abbotsford. And 2011, Eco Dairy installed the second one, and it was the smallest in Canada. It's been off because it proved not economical to run. It's now become a living lab campus where we're allowing a lot of different technologies to come together, right? Because, you know, manure is not waste. I did a TEDx back in 2016 called Poop Soup and the Inevitable Global Movement. And I told my son, it's about the future of food. He says, no, Dad, you work in manure. That's the past of food. We have to change how we think about these things, all right? It really is the ultimate recyclable. And yeah, and it is system solutions, but now we're bringing data, partnered with UBC, doing genomic deep dive into the operations. You know, again, you've got to make sure that you're keeping score on things. And that's what we're developing now, is that platform.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. So question for Sophie. What will be available from Loop stores for Vancouver customers?
So right now, I think we're servicing the Ontario region with our e-commerce platform. And the way we work is we are working with the brands directly in developing their reusable version of their packaging. So, you know, if you think about brand packaging development, typically it might take 2 to 3 years before, you know, a brand launches a brand new product. We're generally pushing them to do it within, you know, less than a year, around a year. So pushing them to move very quickly, but we understand that scale has to be small for consumers first to learn what this is and understand and have that demand for expansion. So typically our retail partners are starting with like 10 locations like Carrefour. They're aiming for 100 by the end of the year. Kroger and Walgreens launching by the end of this year are 27 and 100 locations. So that kind of gives you a ballpark of what a retail pilot might look like. So in Canada, based on Loblaw, we are probably starting in the Toronto, Ontario area. I know Vancouver is also probably maybe the second demanded Canadian location. So I think as we expand, we will start to grow geographic hubs, because that's what will make this reuse network work. If we have just scattered locations across the US, it doesn't really make sense. But, you know, once we launch these 2 retailers, if we're adding, say, Burger King, we also want to build density in Portland and New York and kind of grow from there. So you'll kind of see very city-based growth.
Perfect, thank you. And one question, and this I'll leave it to the panel who wants to take this one on. So is, how do you find the initial conversations taking place with bring new business into this world of circular? What are the steps to that those business need to step over the threshold of resistance and actually buy into this whole cycle? So who's got a bit of experience on how to make that happen?
I can start. I'm sure everyone has so many good ideas here, but I was listening to a webinar a couple of weeks ago from one of the American universities, and there was quite a few people on it that were experienced in the circular economy, including the head of the circular economy at Google. And the question from the audience was like, what do I do if my boss just doesn't get it? Mm-hmm. So you could tell that this person wanted to like take the initiative to start, you know, getting their business onto the circular economy as an opportunity, but they were getting resistance. And the advice from the head of the circular economy at Google, his name is Michael Werner, was sort of surprising to me. He said, take a storytelling course. And I thought about it afterwards, and I was like, that's actually been my lived experience, is that a lot of talking about the circular economy it can seem like jargon to people, or it feels a bit inaccessible. Maybe just it's kind of abstract. And so by making it a story and kind of really thinking about making it accessible and inclusive and not using jargony language might really help people understand the benefits. Especially in a business setting where you need to kind of get across your idea really quickly.
Perfect. And Sophie or Christina, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I think we do a lot in this space because we're working with brands, and it is really important for brands to have that innovation mindset and be a brand who is looking forward. We're often talking to brands who say, you know, we're not an innovator, we are usually a follower. And so it's really finding which brands want to lead in this space and are willing to invest in something that is not scaled and not proven yet, but is going to be the way forward.
Yeah, and I would echo what Sophie's saying, that really the leaders in this space are the ones that have leaders in their own organization. It's perhaps a bit more difficult to influence the ones that do not have leadership. So really it's having a champion in a position of influence that makes a big difference in terms of what the companies can do. I mean, at the same time though, employees can have a strong influence on their fellow employees at the very least. And then I think that can lead to change, but it is a little bit more of an uphill battle.
I'd echo that as well, just to say in regards to the companies, like it starts often with one person, 2 people, 3 people, 4 people within an organization that step forward as steward. It's how it did with Henkel and Beauty Care, and now we're multi-year, multinational, you know, partnerships. So from the staff, from the customers using your purchase power, Paul Pullman saying, you know, boycott versus boycott products that have social and environmental stewardship. So it's really a combination of all pressures. But what we see with companies like Lilly do, who started with their green wipes and plastic neutrality and offsetting inside of their production. Now they're expanding into other products because they've seen such a great response in their consumer base and in the market share that they experience. So it really comes from a lot of angles.
Perfect. Thank you, everybody. All right. And the next question is from a student about, how to start a career in the circular economy as a mechanical engineering graduate student. I'm sure that can apply to a lot of students. And I think I'll just start this off and you guys can add on. It sounds like a lot of what I've already heard is really finding those companies you want to work for that share that vision, and finding other people to talk to and just kind of keeping in the conversation. Anybody else that would like to add something to that piece?
Yeah, Nick, I wouldn't mind adding to that, because I do a lot of presentations to engineering classes. And the thing is, there's 2 things. Obviously, if you can look for the positions that appeal to you on that basis, that you think are linked more towards circular economy, obviously that's an obvious choice. But the other thing is, it doesn't matter what position you take. You need to look at the work that you do from a circular economy perspective. So you can have a great influence in whatever job you have just by thinking that way. And the idea of not thinking in a traditional way any longer, and instead really thinking more holistically, and especially for engineers, because we're the designers. I mean, engineers design things. We need to be smarter at how we design. So to do that, we need to think with a circular economy lens is how we need to think.
Perfect. Thank you, Christina. And the next question is for Sophie. Does Loop or Terracycle have any plans to create opportunities for smaller businesses to participate in the Loop initiatives? I know you're really going after the big change-making brands, and how can the small businesses kind of ride on those coattails, I guess is the question.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a question where we do already work with a lot of small brands who started early on and have kind of grown alongside us. So if you look at some of our website, you'll see that it's not all large brands. Certainly large brands, they market themselves a bit more. But there is a certain level of initial investment to be able to kind of build a brand new pack and a brand new product, where small brands may not have the bandwidth or resources to do that. And that's this kind of system being set up and paid for by larger brands and retailers is also the way to kind of pave the way for smaller brands. Things that we are trying to do is also over time work with some smaller retailers as well, that then can become the direct channels to distribute for some of the smaller brands, and kind of provide more opportunities for smaller brands to join as we begin to grow. Because for a smaller brand, they may not want to just be available, in 10 locations. They want to be part of it when it's a bit larger. So it definitely depends on the brand.
Perfect, thank you. And Lindsey, a question for you about your reports. You had those major categories. Will it have any kind of breakdowns of subcategories, or how detailed will it go inside that area of motivations?
Great question. So the data that we've collected and the insights we've gathered are extremely robust. We asked people to respond to about 70 different attitudinal statements about what they believe or why they do things. And we asked them to tell us about 65 different actions, different kind of choices that they could make across food, transportation, waste, holidays, civic engagement. Like, it was very full life spectrum. And they told us whether they were doing it now, open to doing it, or would not do it. And so the data we have is incredibly complex. And so the report that will be coming out will stay true to the seven motivational profiles. So you could read through it and just basically kind of do like a 5-minute read just to get the high level, like the 30,000 foot view. But we also are then sharing more detailed information if you wanted to actually use those to inform your strategic marketing or inform thinking about your target market. And it will have breakdowns on, all of the actions they're doing, much more kind of specifics around their attitudes that are driving the motivations, the demographic concentrations of the motivation profiles, as well as, the opportunity areas, like what are these motivations most likely to be encouraged to do? So it will be very complex, but there won't be subcategories of motivations. It will be more like the deep dive on that motivation, especially for businesses or organizations that want to use them to inform their target markets.
And when does the report come out?
End of July at the latest. We're planning for a webinar sometime in early July.
Perfect. Yeah, make sure you share that with us. We'll have that on our LinkedIn page.
Yes.
Yeah, and a manufacturing question. So what manufacturing processes are compatible with social plastics? Blow molding, injection mold, extrusion. So I guess the question is, with these social plastics you collect, what can you do with them? How can we bring them back in the system?
Yeah, I mean, really any application. Of course, that's going to be a better question for my director of all of our processes in the supply chain. But I mean, the supply chain of social plastic is expanding. We're being tested for a major car manufacturer right now to put our social plastic in the seats and the floorboards. To again the jackets and hoodies of Hugo Boss. To the food packages, food grade of clear PET. You saw the Windex bottles, stuffing of pillows and down comforters, to PP for the flower pots that are really beautifully, we love those partners all the more because, we love this term, to plastic responsibly, right? Inside of that, really to put our social plastic into products that will be around for a long time, kind of addressing another question that was up above there with Grace, is definitely what lights us up all the more. And it's really about getting the message out there in all different types of products that people can engage with and get educated and use their purchasing power wisely. Accordingly. So really any and all applications, all manufacturing processes, we provide the flake, the pellet, even sometimes the baled material coming from out of our ecosystem. So it really depends on the supply chain at hand.
Perfect. And Christina, do you have any words on that technical process from your experience? You're on mute.
Sorry, I was trying to be courteous. No, I was going to say it actually has a lot to do with not just the type of plastic, because most plastics can be recycled if they are collected in the right way. So it has a lot to do with the journey that it takes to actually get into the recycling process. So I guess I would just say that it's complicated, and it's also highly variable depending on where you are.
Perfect, thank you. And a quick question for Taylor, you might have already answered that, is when are you getting into Nigeria, or guess what are the next markets you're getting into?
Yeah, I started to answer that and wasn't sure about our time. Yes, actually Nigeria is one of our top 3 to 4 countries inside of Thailand, Cameroon is actually, so as we opened Egypt, Africa with Egypt last year, we now are actually, collecting now in the last real quarter to last 2 quarters. So we opened it a year ago, COVID happened, we weren't able to do a lot of the collection. And now we're really ramping really well. And then the expansion through Africa is something we're really excited about, and really obviously it's needed. And what I might say to that is, partners on the ground make our entry into new countries more accessible. So partnering with local nonprofits or networks, like in Indonesia, when we partner with Gojek, which is kind of like the Uber of Southeast Asia, we actually do a dual partnership where a driver can collect the material, bring it back into our ecosystem. The family that collected the material and the driver benefit from both the transaction, and of course it expedites, and having the network of Gojek be optimized for the collection of our material. So you really see ways in which that we can optimize where we operate, networks and partnerships that already exist. So I actually already sent you a LinkedIn, I believe, Muhyiddin. So if you have any connections in Nigeria and you want to see them being brought to life, that's something I can bring to the team. And thank you.
All right, and the next question, there's a bit to unpack in this one, but it was a lot around different indigenous and local traditions, and how is the new circular economy going to be able to protect against some of the trends that have happened with colonization. And you see that really in plastic, where plastic waste is exported to third world countries. So the first world really dumps the problem to those communities that are marginalized. So how will we take this circular economy, and how can it actually protect those marginalized community and not further aggravate the situation that's already there? So it's a big issue there, and who would like to maybe try their attempt to cover an aspect of that? Maybe I'll pick on Taylor first, because you have a lot more knowledge, I believe, in working in those third world countries and some of the aspect you've designed to. If you can maybe want to speak to that or comment to that.
Well, I think, I actually copied it and put it in my notes because I think it's a really interesting point. And I also think that we kind of have to market it into the Western world. Like, yes, the worlds of indigenous peoples have been being circular and having these practices for, years. I don't want to say hundreds, thousands of years. The same could be said of our medicine and our Western science, right? We go back to the roots of like homeopathy and the alchemy and the Ayurveda and the traditional practices. So it can be applied to Western medicine. So I see some parallels in that in my own brain. And at the same time, when we market it to the Western world and we kind of, on some levels, we popularize it and make it digestible for today's people, today's mentality, I think there's some layers in that. So I'm kind of like a yes and in response to that.
Yeah. Anybody else have a comment on that one? Okay. I think one thing I'll say, I think it's an very old tradition in many cultures of not wasting, and I think in our Western world of having this abundance, we've lost that way, and it really seems we're going back to that. And I think it will all but benefit everybody. And I think we have to keep in mind of how does anything we do impact marginalized communities, and then really have an avenue where there's a justice and fair sharing happening. Because currently our current economic model doesn't really have that built in, and that are some of the problems that we're all experiencing because of that. So that'd be something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, like, how can we transfer value, right? So like, how can we benefit? I mean, that's really Plastic Bank's model. It's like, okay, well, how can our recycling in North America benefit Haiti, Nigeria, Egypt, right? How can we have a transfer of value all around the world so that when we do start to like market recycling and this whole circular economy and, benefit, because yeah, companies are benefiting, right? Our companies that we partner are benefiting by partnering with us because they have a marketing story that they tell. Now it's a more authentic one than saying ocean plastic. It's social plastic. So it's upstream. At least we're not pulling it out of the ocean and leveraging this, ocean plastic story. Not that anything's bad or wrong about any of it, because again, it's an army of solutions for an army of problems. And how can we really, like, for us, develop our platform, digital application, and gamify people's, participation, purchasing here to transfer the value there, so as to lift everyone and really bring the billion online accordingly, and just, yeah, again, transfer that value. So that would be something that is what we're working on.
Perfect. And I think another question for you, Taylor, sorry to keep you on the hot seat.
Sure.
There's a comment about the model seems complex, and what areas do you need the most support with from an external stakeholder standpoint?
Complex by what do you mean complex? Just enlarge our business model? It is complex. We've got school programs, we even have faith programs, we've got the collection of the material, we've got education and finance and literacy and financial literacy. I mean, we do like education classes on teaching how to read and write, for goodness sakes. I layered in a program that was teaching our collection members how to become hair care professionals once they kind of got a trust score and were eligible for additional vocational training, right? So we keep on layering on ways in which to bring beauty and bring power and opportunity to our collection members. And I think that's something we haven't been great at, is telling our story in the past. I'm seeing this alert come through. While we are kind of a marketing agency on some levels, we started with infrastructure. Like the last 7 years, we've been in the ground, like figuring out how to collect, how to create the ecosystem, the infrastructure for collection. And we just hired our first CMO like a year ago. Like, how do we tell the story? We have not done any marketing. So we're just starting that. Even the Billion Bottle campaign was our first like real marketing effort to start to say, okay, let's engage the Western world to participate with us. Let's actually get the message out there and really sing from the rooftops what we're doing. So we're just getting started in that. And really dispelling some of the complexity and starting somewhere. And how can we share what is plastic neutrality in a cadence of like, okay, here's a post, and then here's another post, and here's another post for our partners that are plastic neutral. How do we help them tell our story? Something that really is what we're out to accomplish next.
Thank you, Taylor. Perfect. And next question, Chris, question for you. And where do you see the opportunities with food and agricultural waste as a feedstock for biomaterials? And have you seen an appetite for this process in the local economy?
Yeah, so it was other questions earlier too. How do you find your customers? We find people that are suffering the most, right? That's the easy way to attract it, right? Find these challenges. There's definitely demand. Our first large investment was from a synthetic biology company looking for sustainable supply chain. Right, there's a whole lot of stuff going on with products of fermentation in the world. We're seeing all of these alternatives, but if you're starting with terrestrially derived sugars, you're still stuck in the old agriculture models. So as we can move to take apart these materials, right? Manure, it's not waste. It's nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, nutrients, carbon, all of these things. If we can give those clean, everybody needs those. The fact that we're cleaning up the environment, making the new materials to go again, then everybody wins at the equation, as long as you can get the economics to a level of viability, right? So definitely the demand is there. The technologies are there in various places, but there's gaps, right? That's what we're working on, is get all the people together that have the pieces and bring them as close as you can. I put a link in there. There's a NISP program, National Industrial Symbiosis Program. Great connector. They did a pilot, BC and Alberta, that connect the dots too. I said, find all the people that want something, be it relief or a gain, and get those people working together on it. That's the best answer.
Thank you, Chris. And just before I forget, a quick question for you, Taylor. Is Plastic Bank available in Canada?
We don't collect in Canada yet. We want to. We want to be everywhere. I mean, we have this kind of vision of how can we engage some of the homeless, right? How can we give them a cart and an outfit and application access on their phone and engage them? I mean, that's something that we would love to see occur. We just started in areas of extreme poverty because that's where we saw the problem was most insidious. And as we often say, we need an army of problems for an army of solutions for an army of problems. So we're coming, and as especially our partners are asking us to come to the more developed countries, we will. And I think it's a function of all the more as our platform, our application develops, we'll be able to license that in a way that will make that even more exponential and capable to leverage without our direct application. So that's another aspect of our business model for growth. It's a pretty exciting one, because then that will just be the enablement to be everywhere faster, better.
Thank you, Taylor. And Sophie, a question for you is, do you see an application for the distribution and collection for loop products in post-secondary institutions as a place that has a large population and infrastructure?
Right now in our pilots, this is the waste management of Reese products that Loop takes on. So whereas our e-commerce platforms, we partnered with existing like FedEx and UPS for distribution, through the in-store version, we're doing the reverse logistics, and kind of that's the service that we provide for retailers, is that this is really easy for them to simply sell this reusable product just like they would a regular single-use product and ask them to change very little. And we will take it back and kind of clean it and send it back to the manufacturers who are making the product as if they were receiving virgin packaging, except it is reused. As we continue to scale and grow, we can certainly look for, you know, partners in some of those processes and operations.
Perfect, thank you. All right, I think we're at the end of the questions, the specific questions.
I have a question, Nick.
Oh, go ahead.
This is for Sophia. Something I read about Loop was, to me, very important in that beyond just reusing, not just reusing, I mean, it's an incredible motivator for people in itself to not waste. But I read about how some of the Loop options also provide benefits above and beyond the traditional packaging. And it was specific to Haagen-Dazs, and how like a paper with, you know, plastic lined Haagen-Dazs package is actually not great in that the product melts. And the Loop package provides this like extra barrier for the ice cream from the heat of your hand. I was talking about people that eat out of the pint. Who does that? Anyway, I was just wondering if you might talk a little bit about that, because I think that's really important. Again, reaching different motivations, you know, or maybe you have somebody in a household who's really motivated by the, you know, reusable aspect, but maybe, you know, somebody else in the household needs another reason to sign up for Loop. So I was just wondering if you might want to share a little bit about like, what are you seeing in terms of how Loop is actually better from a product performance or consumer experience standpoint?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up, Lindsay. It's one of the things that I kind of breezed by for time reasons, but we want Loop, and we think it's only scalable if we're accessing consumers of all different types of motivations and not just your sustainable consumers. So certainly your consumer who maybe is more interested in trends or just better packaging or more premium products, that's also who we are targeting. So truly everyone who walks into maybe their supermarket and sees this on shelf and is willing to try it for not just the reusable aspect. I do think this is really key, because when we're working with brands, what we're talking about is packaging ownership. A single-use product is single-use because brands are selling that packaging to you. It's not something we really think about as a consumer, but you're spending cents and cents and cents on all of that paperboard ice cream carton and like plastic milk containers. It's being sold to you, and you bought it, you don't want to keep it, so now you have to recycle it or get rid of it somehow. In a circular economy and a reuse model like Loop, that packaging is never purchased by the consumer. You put down a deposit, then you return the packaging, you get your deposit back. You're simply borrowing it. And so this is not a new concept. Obviously, the milkman is your kind of classic model of packaging that you never own. But an interesting aspect is that packaging that you treat as an asset that you purchase to use over and over again also just has more value in it. So you don't have to produce it for, you know, 5 to 10 cents per product. It doesn't have to be, you know, a pouch or as little material as possible. And with that value in the packaging means that brands can innovate. So I would say in the short term, there's a lot of brands who just want a reusable version. Any pack will do, and they want to kind of test, are consumers interested? Are they receptive to this model? Do they understand? But brands like Haagen-Dazs have already started to innovate their packaging. And I think with Loop growing, you'll see a lot more of that, because they have the ability to create at scale more valuable and more premium packaging that they can make more functional. So yes, a double-walled like stainless steel container instead of a paperboard carton, because you're not going to use it once and just throw it away. And I think it's really fascinating that with reusable packaging, maybe even comes like smart technology or all kinds of things that are never possible in a single-use product or pack.
Thank you. And then here, an interesting comment from the audience, and it'd be interesting to see what anybody would have to say about that is, yeah, we hear about the cost of a reusable container, but if you look at the single use, that there's the hidden cost that we pay in our taxes for the waste management and what the current recycling system costs. Does anybody have any figures, any perspective of what that actual cost is and how it could compare to a more circular economy? And even the broader perspective of the economic benefit of going circular vice the single use and having the cost in the background hidden away.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Nick. And what that actually brings up is a real integral piece of circular economy, which is extended producer responsibility. The idea that the producer of the product should be responsible beyond the time that they sell it to the consumer, that they should actually be responsible for their design choices. And so I think that's this comment is very much related to that of course, all of us end up paying, usually through our municipal fees of some kind, we end up paying for the disposal of that material, when in reality, that really should lie with the producers so that they get the trigger of the more wasteful packaging then costs them more. So then they are actually encouraged, not just from a marketing standpoint, but encouraged from a financial standpoint to design better packaging.
Perfect, thank you. And just to follow up on that, what I like about that, it turns into a whole, if they're responsible for that cost, then their whole business model will sometimes shift to not just they'll be renting you a washing machine instead of selling you one, just to how that could look in a very different way. Okay, so that's the last question. Do we have any other questions from the audience or the panel?
I actually have a question for Lindsey, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Lindsey, I just wonder if you can comment on, because you're so ingrained in social research, that I understand from the social research that's been done, there's this recognized gap between what people say their opinions are, what you're going to get in your surveys, for example, and how they actually behave when they walk down the street or walk into a store. And those two things there's quite a gap between, or at least there used to be. I just wonder if you can comment on that, because I think that's important to our understanding of that research.
Absolutely. And that is very real. And that's a kind of why we need to employ different research approaches and triangulate them, or look at them together. And so I'm going to maybe put Mark Wandler on the spot here, but another tool that was originally created by Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, which is also the organization that puts on the World Circular Economy Forum every year, this year, which is going to be in Canada or in Toronto, or online if we can't go ahead in person. But Sitra is developing frameworks to address exactly that problem. So the motivation profiles are one level of understanding, which is more about attitudes and stated actions. But they've also very much appreciated what you're saying. It's like, how do we actually translate that understanding to measure how to actually change behavior? And so they have developed something called the SHIFT framework. And it was co-developed with Dr. Kate Waite, who is an absolute incredible leader in the field of behavioral science research at UBC. I may have said UBC already, but anyway, she partnered with Sitra to develop this framework on what are the levers that we can use to help understand both our target market, but ways to actually gauge their change in behavior. And so the process that the SHIFT program takes people through, and Mark Wandler and Sustainable, his business, has just been through one of the SHIFT programs that we run with Kate. and the Share, Reuse, Repair initiative, it basically helps understand like, who is your target market? What behavior do you want to change or encourage towards circularity? And then helps participants design an A/B test. And then to see, you know, what messages could you use? Like, how could you speak to the different motivations in different ways, and then test to see which one was actually effective in changing behavior. So the answer is like, the motivation profiles are not the only, like, that's only part of the answer here in terms of actually getting through to how do we actually translate that say and do gap. But I would definitely recommend kind of looking up Citra and the SHIFT framework. Or you can get in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat, and there will be another cohort of the SHIFT program that's going to be running later in the year to encourage any other organizations or brands that want to actually kind of help specifically tackle behavior change. So Mark, if you're still there, if you want to comment on your experience at SHIFT, I would totally welcome you to. He may have dropped off.
I have not.
Oh, yay! Do you want to add to anything to kind of bring SHIFT to life for Christina's question?
Sure. So I really love going through the process of it all. We're probably a company who's been involved with it more because I actually did my MBA at UBC and got to work with Kate ahead of time. So that was fun, but just getting to go through that model and getting to go through it with other sustainably minded companies is supremely important, because you spend so much time in it. And when you have somebody else with similar motivations, they'll throw ideas at you too in this workshop. So it's been really cool to see the evolution of it. And it's in a week's time, we actually go and report back. So that's fun too. But it's kind of fun. And I can share like what we came out of it. We actually laser targeted, because we've changed our product. Even if you change your product just slightly, you can completely demotivate somebody. And so we've had to go into packaged goods because of COVID, where we used to sell a cookie, and the logistics behind the two are completely different. And so now our product, because we can put more on the packaging, is actually being looked at as a sustainability tool. Baking at home has really taken off. So our target market has turned away from this fast, busy tech person who grabs a cookie on the go at the coffee shop to the at-home mom who's looking for a way to like talk sustainability with her children. And we actually have like impact on the front of the packaging. So it's been interesting to go through that evolution of it all. But yeah, I'll stop talking there, and thanks for the opportunity to share about Sustainable. If you haven't checked it out, check it out. We turn beer waste into baked goods and baking mixes. Bye.
Thank you, Mark. All right, and quick question for Christina. How do you promote zero waste to companies?
Yeah, that's a deep question. Kind of relates a bit back to the conversation we had about employees and how employees can have impact. But I think what we're seeing something different in the world of business now, where we're seeing very strong leaders that are really out in front. And I think the influence of those leaders on their peer companies is having probably the strongest influence of anything. And what we're seeing is normally it's things like regulation and promotion from government, that you sort of government action used to be what drove the changes within the business community. But we're in a situation now where business is so far ahead that it's like governments are having a hard time even keeping up, to be honest. So I really think it's that influence, that peer influence of one company to another, that is really making the difference. And so highlighting the successful businesses that are making a difference and actually quantifying the difference that they're making, I think is extremely powerful. And the more attention that they get, the more we're going to see that influence, again, other companies that are similar.
Can I do a follow-up question, Nick, on Christina?
Well, Nick's on mute, so go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
Right. Hi, Christina. I really love the conversation. I think it's a, like you say, it's a deep conversation. I just have it back in my mind. I just wish that the zero waste or the waste less or the circular economy and everything, it's a little bit more control at the business permit level, in a sense that if I am a restaurant, I have to have a business that shows that I demonstrate that I can make food without making people sick. That's an obligation from the city for me to show that on my permit. Why don't we have a similarity where zero waste should be part of your business plan in any matter, in any way, by having education and potentially certification, so that every business, not just the top leaders with the top brands who have very much a lot of marketing power to create sustainability and circularity in their business plan, but all businesses, the small mom and pop shop to the big construction company to the big industrial producers and why not. I feel like we need the government at every level, city to federal to provincial, to start to drive the train here, drive the bus on this imperative that we need on zero waste. My
Yeah,
thoughts.
I think you're right. Or at the very least, recognize what is happening. And I think that's mostly what we're seeing. And it seems to happen much more readily at the municipal level, so the smaller levels of government. But again, there are certain requirements around having to have certain activities, for example, in like businesses in the city of Calgary, for example, have to have diversion infrastructure. Like that's something that they're required to do. So they have to actually be part of the programs. But I think the other piece, and one of the pieces that has been quite effective in some jurisdictions, is recognizing those zero waste businesses that you're talking about, rather than necessarily requiring them to be zero waste, which can be complicated. Instead, recognizing the ones that are zero waste and giving them promotion and free advertising for achieving that. That's kind of, I think, the best that we've seen to this point, but this is evolving so quickly. And again, back to extended producer responsibility, that's a game changer too. So actually requiring businesses to be fully responsible for the waste that they are producing, that I think is you're already starting to see significant change. So it's going to continue to change. And again, I say what I said before, the businesses honestly generally are ahead. So I think government's best role is to support and recognize.
Yeah, we'd love to see maybe a tax, a zero waste tax, the reduction for companies who are taking advanced policies and items to reduce their waste using many programs that exist, or actually be creative, because money talks all the time. Thank you, Nick.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerome. All right, so now we'll just start closing comments. I'll just, there is one last unanswered question about going beyond consumer packaged goods. So if any of the presenters want to respond to that in the chat. And what I'll ask is for each of you to take a minute or less and just leave us with what would you recommend our audience to do and how to move forward in the circular economy from an individual or small business perspective. And what are your thoughts? And Christina, if you want to start us off.
Sure. I would say, again, it's all in how we look at things. We need to look at things more holistically, and that's what circular economy is about. And recognizing, again, that it's not about recycling, it's about a system, and it's about an improved system, and most importantly, a better design system, so that we have better design for products and materials, so that they then play a more integral role in circular economy. That's the best thing that we can do, I think, as individuals, is start to think within a circular economy context.
Taylor?
Sorry. So what we can do now, what we can do going forward. So look for social plastic products as it relates to Plastic Bank. I'm inspired by the UN's green nudges inside of, what we can kind of take on actively and then also steward in our communities. A lot of universities are taking on the green nudges practice. I think there are like 10 to 12 of them. We have a plastic footprint calculator that you could actually test your own plastic footprint. We also have the ability to have our partners be plastic neutral, but also individuals. So for, I think it's $44 a year, you can be plastic neutral as an individual. Use your purchasing power in your world to say no. They only replace what we use. And so when you say that you don't need it, that creates a new path and it shifts business, and your voice is powerful inside of all of that. And then, share these things, share these conversations with your friends, share this recording with your friends. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to sharing this recording with people in my community. And I just want to thank everyone for being here and for having me, and for the speakers as well.
Thank you. Chris, your final thoughts.
Yeah, Fortis BC offers a renewable natural gas program. Sign up for that, because revenue from that can be used to drive that extended producer responsibility the world is demanding. It's one of the few mechanisms that everyone can pay a little piece in for maybe $2 a month. You can make a difference cumulatively.
Thank you. Lindsey.
It's a great question. What I really am focused on are, what are the outcomes of the circular economy that can really benefit people and nature? So, the circular economy for me, it's how, but the why we're doing it is that we need a system that actually contributes to people's well-being and regenerates nature. And that's what really got me excited about it. And so looking for those benefits for people and the outcomes that we can measure that start really showing that we're in the right direction for both people and the desperately needed regeneration of nature and biodiversity. That's really what I think why we should be doing this, and looking for those examples in the circular economy as it's moving forward is really what's important. And I like Taylor's idea of sharing this discussion with your friends and your network, because it's been a fantastic, such a comprehensive conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Sophie, your final thoughts.
I think pretty similar to everyone else, we're trying to, within the circular economy, change both kind of on the small level, which is individual action, and then on the system level, trying to change the actual systems. I think you always need a bit of both. So for myself, it started with me and thinking about the physical trash that I'm putting out, trying to kind of, in an iterative way, find solutions and make changes. And I think leading by example is always helpful, instead of, preaching to your friends. Perhaps just doing it yourself, I think, is always very helpful. And then systemically thinking about, the organizations that you're in, maybe the companies that you work for, the schools that you operate within. What are some maybe small level systemic changes that you can try to influence within your own communities? I think that's also an area that you could look at to influence more than just yourself.
Thank you, Sophie. So I'd like to thank all of our presenters for their time and really sharing themselves, what they're up to, and participating in our event. And also like to thank everybody who took time out of their day, work day or not, to be here with us and part of the discussion. And really the comments, the questions really made this much richer. And what I'll leave you with, this is recorded, so we'll have the recording out. You'll find it posted on our Future Proof Network website. The link is right there. It'll have a link to all the podcasts as well. I've recorded podcasts with all of our presenters, except for Sophie. I recorded a podcast with some of her coworkers. So you'll have a more in-depth conversation with each of these. If you want to dig in a little bit deeper, we have some of them on YouTube and on Anchor. The links are right there. Please check out our Future Proof website as well. We'll build in a network for people that want to collaborate inside of this space. And yeah, thank you everybody for creating this wonderful event. And really what I hear is there's something everybody can do to further the circular economy. Share what you know, share the vision. Some people haven't even heard the concept of a circular economy. So it's really out to for people to know that this shift is coming and see what we can do to make it happen. So again, thank you, everybody, and it's been great having you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
That was fun.
Thank you, Nick. Great job. It's amazing.